All right, what is up, everybody? We are back with another edition of Everyday Hoops. Hope you guys are having a good one today. I'm going to talk a little bit about restricted free agency. We still have a couple of guys that are some of the top free agents left that are in restricted free agency, and we don't really know what the situation is going to look like. Are they going to be on their teams? How much money are they going to get? Are they going to get signed and trade? We have no idea. So I'm going to talk about some of them here in today's video. Thank you guys for the views on the videos and the shorts recently. I really appreciate it. If you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, liking, turn notifications, doing all stuff like that. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps out a lot. Link to my Twitter and all that stuff down in the description below. And yeah, don't waste any more of your time. Let's get right into it. So we're talking about restricted free agency. We have a couple of guys, specifically we talk about 4 guys that are in restricted free agency. That are some of the top free agents left that still have no deals, and we don't have really any idea about what their deals. Those 4 guys are going to be Cam Thomas, Josh Giddy, Jonath Kaminga, and Quinn Grimes. Those 4 guys. Definitely some different type of players and names, but they all have one thing in common, which is they're restricted free agents. Obviously, restricted free agency used to help guys that get off their rookie deal, like teams to kind of keep their rights and they just don't just up and leave to random situations. Obviously, it's more for teams to kind of have control of their young guys, and usually we don't see a lot of guys going into restricted free agency that are the calibers of these guys, which are, well, still to be determined, but all these guys have shown some flashes at some point in their NBA career that warrants something. These aren't just random. Most of you see random guys that haven't really figured out yet, guys that look like they aren't going to be starters, rotational players going to restricted free agency, and teams are just like, all right, whatever, you know. But these guys are actually have started in their careers, have had many different positions in their careers, have shown flashes again of something there in their careers, and yet they're still in restricted free agency. We're about almost a week into the offseason of free agency, and we still, not even like they're still there, we still don't really know what's going to happen in terms of, are they going to stay on their teams? Are they going to get the amount of money they want? How much money are they going to get with the second apron? Are they going to get signed and traded? And if they do get traded, what teams are going to be willing to make the sacrifice to take on the money? And it's just a lot of questions, about restricted free agency. And we've known that restricted free agency isn't something that's really, it's been, you don't see a lot of movement in restricted free agency. Meaning, when someone goes into restricted free agency, 97% of the time, it means they're going back to their new team. Or, well, going back to the team that they were just on. It's rare that we see restricted free agency guys leave, straight up, and teams don't match the offer unless it's a sign and trade. Which I can't really recall off the top of my head if there are any restricted free agency sign and trades, but I'm sure it definitely has happened before. We've seen instances a couple years ago with DeAndre Ayton being a famous example, where he went to restricted free agency because he had a kind of year with the Phoenix Suns. They didn't know what his value was and how much, and the Pacers came in and offered him a pretty big contract that Phoenix eventually matched, a little bit while later, and then eventually he got traded. Zach LaVine has been another one too. A long, long time ago, a couple years ago, before he was an All-Star, the Kings offered Zach LaVine a pretty nice contract in restricted free agency. The Bulls ended up matching, he became All-Star, and eventually he ended up on the Sacramento Kings at some point down the road. So you've seen instances of teams going in and offering, and just putting an offer because it's like, why not put an offer? Give him some big money just because. But the teams that are matching it, it's very rare. I can't remember off the top of my head. I probably should have looked it up before the video. I can't remember the last time that we've seen a restricted free agency of a certain caliber. Not like a random bench dude that just ended up going to another team because the team didn't want him anymore. I'm talking about actual, starter, valuable, have shown flashes, good young player type of guy going to restricted free agency and straight up leave, and the team just say, you know what, you can go. We don't care. And now with the second apron, in play, it just makes things even more difficult for a lot of these guys that already, for one, we don't know what really their role is in their careers. Are they future all-stars? Are they good starters? Are they eventually going to be bench guys? We don't really know. And with all the money going around, the league is the most expensive it has ever been, obviously, and these young guys want their bag, which you can't fault them for. These young guys want to get paid because they think in their minds they deserve to be paid, and they think they are really, really good. But with the second apron now a looming thing, you've already seen so many moves. Like the Boston Celtics have had to break up their championship team because of the second apron. The Nuggets have had to make some, you've already seen teams had to shake things up. The Grizzlies had to trade Desmond Bane. You've already seen the second apron make waves throughout the NBA on how roster construction looks now in the league and how to value your money. And with these guys wanting 25 to 30 million dollars, it's just with the second apron, it's tough to commit 25 to 30 million dollars on a guy that's still kind of a question mark on what his role is going to be on our team. You know, like, is he going to be a pillar of the team for the next 5 years when we pay him this money? Is he going to work out? Then if he is, and we know for sure he's going to be, then yeah, give him the money. If we still are kind of in a limbo question mark of like, are we going to pay $28 million to a guy that we still don't really know if he's a future all-star? We don't know what his role, is he still a starter on this team? Is he going to be a valuable starter? Are we going to have to trade him at one point down the line? Are we going to have to these guys are still big question marks. And I can see the hesitation. And we've seen these teams not go all in and right away give 25 to 30 million dollars to these guys already. You know, they're weighing out and see. Kind of like the old school, like, let the market test your value. You know, you go out there, you see what you can get, and come back to us and see. If you can get $30 million from somewhere, then cool. You get $30 million, we might match it, and we'll bring you back. But we're not just going to come out and just straight up just give you whatever you want already. You know, like, the second apron is such a big thing that teams have to be able to value their, their money and where they're putting their money into. Specifically for the players, Cam Thomas is a big question mark. He's one of the top restricted free agents left. And I can't blame the Nets for not kind of knowing what they want to give him, because we still don't really know what Cam Thomas is. Like, obviously, he can get buckets. We know he can score. That's his main attribute. He can go get buckets whenever he wants to. And he's a good scorer. He's had good moments. And he's still very, very young. Probably about like 22, 23-ish. Yeah, he's still very young. But what do you think Cam Thomas is going to be in the next 2 or 3 years? Especially with the Brooklyn Nets being a team that is still in limbo of like, we're trying to rebuild. We're bringing in all these young guys. Where does Cam Thomas fit in all this? Is Cam Thomas going to be a centerpiece of the future? Like, when we look in 4 or 5 years when we're competitive, is Cam Thomas going to be one of the centerpieces of it? Is he a valuable starter that can, be an all-star one day? Or is he just like a good scorer that is young, that still hasn't figured out the rest of the game, and eventually at some point down the line, he's going to be a six-man in the Jordan Clarkson, Malik Monk type of role? Like, we don't really know. And the Nets don't know. So what would you pay Cam Thomas? He's got the numbers to warrant pay. Like, he's averaged 20, 24, like, he's averaged big numbers and has had 40-point games and all that stuff. So that warrants some amount of money. But what the role is and what he's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years down the line, we don't really know that yet. And him being injured a lot of last year doesn't really help that. So if I'm the Nets, I'm probably trying to, $20 million, I don't think is crazy for Cam Thomas. I really don't think it is. And I seen, like, on Twitter and X and stuff, like, a lot of Nets fans like Cam Thomas and want to bring Cam Thomas back. But I can't really fault Sean Marks for not knowing what I want to do. Like, maybe I don't know how much he exactly wants, but I assume he wants a lot. You have to assume that, right? Like, I think 22, 23 isn't bad for Cam Thomas. Like, I don't think that's a bad deal. Anything probably 25 and over might be a little bit like, whoa, we're really investing like he's going to be a star for us one day. But I don't think the low 20s, I don't think is a bad thing for Cam Thomas. That's why I pay him. But we don't know. Josh Giddy, another example. He got traded from OKC to Chicago, 1, because of the fit, and 2, because he needs to get paid. And it's like, Josh Giddey's a good basketball player. He can pass the ball. He can run an offense, do stuff like that. We know his faults of scoring ability, 3-point shooting, all that stuff. He went to Chicago last year. He didn't start great, but the last couple months of the season, he played very, very well. And the Bulls are also in like the worst position in the league, where it's like, they're not tanking. They're not bad enough to tank, but they're also not good enough to be a playoff team. So they're just kind of around the 8 to 11 range and are still, I guess, like, comfortable with that. They don't make great moves. They traded Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro and no picks. They got Josh Giddey for no picks and one of the best role players in the game that went on to win a championship in Alex Caruso. So the front office doesn't really know what they're doing a lot of times. But Josh Giddey is still young. He's still about maybe 21, 22-ish. He's shown flashes of being good, especially last year with your team. He showed flashes of being pretty good. And you don't really have a lot of good young players around right now. You don't have anybody, I think, with higher potential on your team than Josh Giddey. Besides, depending on what you think of what Noah Senge could be, who's a project type pick. But you don't have anyone else on your team, a young player with the potential that Josh Giddy has. Which, what is his potential? He maybe could make an all-star team one day if he develops a little bit more. So you know, they've said 30 million is what Josh Giddy wants. Apparently, there's reports of the negotiations between Josh Giddy and the Bulls are kind of far away right now. But I think probably something similar to Cam Thomas, where 22, 23, I don't think is out of the realm of craziness for Josh Giddy on the Bulls. Because again, he's shown flashes. He's still young, and you don't. What else do you have going for you right now if you're Chicago? Like Dalen Terry, decent. Kobe White probably won't be on the team for a lot longer. Isaac Okoro, who you just traded for, he's not really a starter right now. Patrick Williams, you gave him 25 mil, which is probably a big reason why Josh Giddey wants 30, because it's like, if you pay this guy, is it 25? Something around that. You pay this guy 20 plus million to average 9 points and be just like decent, then I should get 30 because I ain't dang near the best player on this team. Like, I can't blame Josh Giddey for thinking that. So I don't know what that negotiation is going to be like. Ultimately, I think he's going to end up back in Chicago, similar to Cam Thomas. I ultimately think he's going to end up back in Brooklyn. Josh Giddey's going to end up back in Chicago. The money, I would guess around 25 million, somewhere in that range of 25. I think it's not crazy. I think it's something that's going to be like me in the middle. Quinn Grimes is an interesting thing. Quinn Grimes, he's been around the league the last 2 years. He ended up in Philadelphia, where at the end of the season, he just was like, he popped off, averaged like 20 points per game, had a 46-point game. Like, he just went absolutely nuclear in the last like 2 months of the season with Philadelphia. I made a video about it even. That's how crazy he was going. And now he wants about 22 to 25, I think is kind of what he wants. And I can understand Philadelphia kind of holding back a little bit because that was only a 2-month stretch. I think I love Quinn Grimes. Quinn Grimes is a really good player. I don't know if he's a 20-point per game scorer, but I do think he's a really solid young player that could shoot the three and defend and is going to give you some good things. And I would like to see him back in Philadelphia. But for 22 to 25 million, we already have an expensive team with Paul George, Maxi's extension kicking in, Joel Embiid. I can understand kind of the hesitancy of like, do we really pay 24 for 25 mil for Quinn Grimes for a 2-month stretch that very well could come back next year? He could go back to averaging 11 and 12 points per game with this team. Like, I really understand the hesitancy for Philadelphia. That's the one that makes the most sense of like, what do we pay him? Because again, he's shown he's solid. Is he like $25 million solid? Not for his entire career, but over those 2 months, it's like, hey, I can understand Quinn Grimes wanting to, get the most out of that 2-month stretch, because who knows if we ever going to see that again from Quinn Grimes. And maybe he does come back in next year and all of a sudden, that's just who he is. He's a bucket getter. Which, if that's what he is, then that will really help, and that money makes a lot of sense. But you can understand the kind of step back of like, do we pay him this much money for a 2-month stretch when we didn't have anybody? He was out there with G Leaguers at the end of the year. I don't know. Quinn Grimes, I kind of don't really know. Like, I if I had to bet, I would guess back in Philadelphia. I don't know what the money would look like. I would guess probably somewhere around 20. I think is reasonable. And if he does get signed and traded, what team would like to put a bid in on Quinn Grimes? The last one is Jonath Kaminga, and he's the biggest question mark out of all of these guys. I've already talked about a little bit in my last video. I talked about what teams are losing in the offseason. I talked about the Warriors and Jonath Kaminga. But he's a restricted free agent. He wants a lot of money. And he's probably maybe the least proven out of all 4 of these guys. Him and Quinn Grimes, back and forth. He's probably the least proven out of all these guys because he was a former top 10 pick. He's shown a little flashes here and there, but ultimately he just hasn't really gotten a real chance yet to show who he is. And in this Warriors system, a Warriors team that is still trying to win a championship with Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green, I don't know if I'm willing to invest a lot of money in a young guy that we still don't know what his role is. Is he a future all-star? Is he just a good scoring bench play? Like, I don't really like, what is Jonath Kaminga right now? What is his role? What is like his like thing in the NBA? We still don't know. He had a good game last year in the postseason, but against the Timberwolves without Steph, so maybe that's something a little bit. And he had a flash or two the last 2 years. He's had a flash mid-season of like, oh shoot, Jonath Kaminga could be like really good. But he's still like maybe the biggest question mark out of all 4 of these guys. Of like, what is his future going to be? He's still just 22 years old. He's got the athleticism and has shown some scoring ability, but it's like, what really is Jonath Kaminga, especially with the Warriors? And this is one where I really do not want to see Jonath Kaminga back in Golden State. I really don't. I just think that relationship is kind of should be over. I think the playing around with his minutes of like, it's been a cycle the last 2 years of like he starts the year, he doesn't really play a lot. That's an outrage by the fans and by Jonath Kaminga himself. Jonath Kaminga literally had to, was that last year, or the year before, literally had to request a trade and come out and say, I don't think Steve Kerr knows what he's doing, basically, to get in the rotation. He had to go out and say, I don't want to be here anymore to get minutes, And it's just been a cycle of the start of the year, he doesn't really play. And then it's mid-season, like about a couple months in the year, it's an outrage of like, why isn't Jonath Kaminga playing? And Jonath Kaminga doesn't want to be here anymore. Is he going to get traded? And Steve Kerr is forced to play him. He has a couple good games here and there. He has a good hot start. Then he comes down to earth a little bit, maybe gets hurt. Then he's back to playing like 12 minutes per game, at the end. And then it's like, oh, is Jonath Kaminga really that good? And then it's just been like a cycle like that the last 2 years of like a circle that we're going in. And at this point, I think it's best for the Warriors' sake because I don't think they're trying to kind of win a championship with Steph Curry. And I don't think Jonath Kaminga really fits the system anymore. And for Jonath Kaminga's sake, it's better to go to a fresh start in a situation where you're actually going to have a little more sense of clarity of like what I'm going to be and a team that is maybe not I'm not saying prioritize him and making him the star player, but having a lot more opportunity. A young team that has more opportunity, kind of like what we saw with the Rockets did with Cam Whitmore, where they sent him to Washington, a team that he's going to get a lot more opportunity on, and he'll actually play. Like it won't be a question mark of like, is Cam Whitmore going to ever play? Is he not? Like, what's going to happen? That's what I want to see from Jonath Kaminga. I want to see him on a new team. If he goes back to the Warriors, I'm going to be kind of disappointed and sad. But there's been teams that have been talking. The Kings have been a team interested. The Heat, the Bulls. I think I saw the Bucks. The Wizards were a team that just kind of got involved. But now they got Cam Whitmore, so I don't know if they're really going to go after Jonath Kaminga. But like, if there's any potential of a sign and trade candidate out of these four guys, it's Jonath Kaminga. Like, I really want to see him gone. The money is a big question too because he wants a lot. I don't think he's worth that much. I don't think he's showing as much flashes as guys like Josh Giddy or Cam Thomas, who I don't think are getting 30. So if they're not getting 30, no way Jonath Kaminga is getting 30. I would say probably somewhere around the low 20s would be like 20 to 22 range. Kind of similar to what I said about Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas maybe a little bit more, like 23, 24. 20 to 22 for Jonath Kaminga, I think, is a solid deal. But I really do want to see Jonath Kaminga on a new team. But yeah, man, I mean, restricted free agency has always been really a weird thing that's happened that no one really thinks about a lot. But now with the second apron and these specific players that are kind of in this weird mold of the NBA that are still young, they have potential, but what it really is their ceiling, what is their role? It's just very interesting. So we're gonna wait and see. Just have to wait and see on when these guys sign, where they go, how much money they get. Are they gonna stay around in their new team? Like, I don't really know. My predictions: Cam Thomas stays in a net. Josh Giddey stays a Bull. Quinn Grimes, I'm still kind of in the middle 50-50. But if I had to say, I would say back in Philly. Jonath Kaminga, I don't think is going to be a Warrior. I think Jonath Kaminga will be a Sacramento King. That's all I'll say. I think Jonath Kaminga will be a Sacramento King or Miami Heat. I can definitely see Miami happening because Miami's just in a weird spot. But I say Jonath Kaminga is a Sacramento King. That's what I'll say. Those are my predictions. Let me know down in the comment section below what your predictions are, how much money they're going to get, where do you think these guys are going to end up, and just anything you want about restricted free agency in this weird situation. But yeah. Hey guys, good beef today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, if you enjoyed the content around here, consider subscribing, liking, turn on notifications, doing all stuff like that. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps out a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.